This is the Ponderous Brick Thinker with a castle update. And the update is, after the hiatus, there is still much work left to do to make this a castle. So during the hiatus, I did not really physically work on the castle. I did move it, and even though it was meant just to be moved from one end of the room to the other, so that I can use the desk for the Learning from the Pro series, this held together pretty good. So I'm kind of glad for that. And even though I did not work physically with a castle, I did think about it, especially just two areas. There were 8 that I did leave off from. We'll see if I get to it in this episode. But I do want to leave off, or I do want to start off with what I was thinking about, particularly the bottom floor for the Tower of Understanding. So to emphasize the thickness of the material, I am going to try and just emphasize the corner, which will be thicker. I probably can go into this line here and then remove the middle columns. So as you can see, because the thickness I'm trying to emphasize with the rock, so to speak, I have very little room to understand Earth. But if I emphasize the corners, thicken them a bit, going to this line here, and removing the center column, I can go in the direction I want to go, I believe, so that the heaviness is still there. The in-between will be the modern material, which will be the medium azure, and that will be kind of the modern filling in the gaps between the original architecture. So I'm thinking the columns here will be thicker, and then also right here will be a thick wall with the vertical elements. So in other words, the stairs. Because this is going to be several levels, I do want to kind of make it realistic so that if I use this, carve the stairs into this wall, it can help. But even then, I think I'm going to still need to go up in another way, especially because this is 8 bricks tall. It's going to be much more stair intensive than what I had for this tower right here, which is only 6. So the first area to work on is the Tower of Understanding. First the corners, then the back wall with the stairway. We'll see how it goes. I removed the corners to give me an idea of where the columns are, but also to say that the columns were about 3 by 3 in this version. So I'm going to go out and make it a 4 by 4. I did keep the midway columns in place, at least the base, to help suggest maybe there could be a base for the new architecture. So it's only going to be 1 level high. It might be okay if I come out this way, making maybe a 2 by 2, maybe a 2 by 4. We'll see. But that's just to suggest there was something here before, and then the new architecture can be on top of that. And we can see that because it's not going to be a commitment just to have 1 level. This could be something special. I did have it in place when I was creating the rock formations. Maybe something could happen here. And this can help create the thickness of the corners be really prominent. And also, more so than that side, but also to kind of suggest this was really a fortification. Then something can happen on this corner. This came as a result of creating the rock formations to create, something there. At the time, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but this provides an opportunity to really make this corner thicker and be more prominent than the other corners. And so this could be considered the main angle of the tower. We'll see how that goes. But from here, I have some directions in mind on how to take it. One, using slopes so that it just has that very dominant angle to it so that it can start thicker and then gradually get thinner as it goes up. It is rather simple, but it can be really a dominant shape to the whole tower. So it will happen here and also on that side. I will need to kind of, play around with it to see if I need to do something else. But maybe it also can come this way to really use this part, or maybe both ways. So that's one idea. The other idea is to use several slopes to kind of create a frame around the column so that it has some character, and I can have more layers inside, like so, to kind of really sell the idea that this is made of layers. There's several blocks involved, and to kind of sell the idea that this is a massive structure or a massive element. And the other idea is to have more or less a simple column. And I think these are wedges, but have them placed like this. Obviously the corner will be, or this will be thicker, but to have it like that and narrow on the bottom and then go wider on top, it's kind of subverting the idea. But if you have somebody just kind of standing there, you kind of have this effect that there's something massive hanging over you. So that's one thought. And this does have a cleaner thought to it, just so that there's simple shapes. You have a simple shape and then this kind of clean lines to kind of create that massive column. So the only way to go forward is to do some sketches and see which one I like best. And here we go. So here is one corner using slopes to kind of create the column there. It does reach to the 8 level, just so that for reference. And let's see, it has some promising look to it. The color is going to be an issue because it's right next to trees that are going to be using the same color. So if anything, probably reduce the reliance on the brown, but the 2-3 high slope, I think I got this individually, so I don't have these in the other colors, particularly the dark red, dark orange, dark tan, or even tan, so that if I can find more, I'll probably switch them out so that it's not right next to the trees. So it is interesting. I'll still have to think about it. I'm gonna now start working on the next corner, and it's not gonna be as wide because it doesn't have the same footprint as this one, but we'll see how I can take it. Oh, before I go there, I do want to see how it looks with the green slopes. It's kind of borrowing the same shape to it. There we go. Because the green hill is roughly the same idea as what I'm having here, just using a lot of slopes to create that kind of gradual look to it. And this is supposed to be a grassy hill coming down this way. This one, I'll still need to think about it some more. It is not as busy because I'm using larger slopes, and here I'm using more of the one, let's see, 2 wide, 1 high slopes, so that it's a little bit more intense. This one's more gradual. It can go either way. So I'm going to start working on the other side, this corner, and see how that looks. And then after that, maybe to the next sketch. So here we go. This corner is completed now. As you can see, it's kind of not as massive as this side, but it has that same kind of form. Just kind of looking from different angles, and you can also see I introduced the medium azure. Not necessarily that's the idea of it, but just to give me an idea, how does this color look next to the browns? And what kind of shapes can I start thinking about to fill in the areas? And I also put some here. This is actually the center of the green plate, but as you can see, this pushed this opening that way, but I can always move it. The reason being, there is going to be some rock here, and maybe I can put the grays, whites, and blacks here and put the medium azure on top of that. So this is just to see how it looks kind of in this stage. It's very rough. Um, the other thought is to make this whole wall slopes. I'll have to be careful with the amount of slopes that I do have. So if I go with that idea, but I think it's okay. It's nothing too grand yet. So I'm still working on it. The other thing is the availability of the colors. I ran out of the 2 deep, 3 high browns. So there we go. I cannot keep on using those. Those would probably have been preferable. They're much more steeper and they can get to this height without having to go that direction, which is why this is kind of offset. Let's see. Again, I have to think about the trees. They're not that, distracting as saying this is a tree or this is a stone. And the other thought is, let's see, just to put something. Bit of asymmetry, but that's a thought. And this is more or less, just a frame to hold something new between the pillars. But okay, so there's that idea. Now that I have it documented, I can go on to the next sketch, which is more or less a more simple column, but to have the slopes kind of frame it. We'll see how that goes. For the next idea, I am going to start with the basic column shape. Then I'm going to add slopes to it. I did purposely put orange or dark orange here because it is a very unique color, at least to my collection. And so right away, I want to start off with that there is some kind of break going on here and that this is emerging from the slopes area. I know it's kind of hard to describe and imagine what I'm describing, but well, first of all, this is what I have here. Basically, it's going to be underneath everything, and that's the next step. Here is the next idea where it did get out of hand a bit, but here is where I started off. So it starts with here's the original slopes going in and then coming out. The overall idea is to kind of not do what this does, which goes to a point further into the plate so that it loses this much wall space or part of the building. But by having the inverted slopes, I can say that this is the corner for the next floor instead of having it further in and then reducing the amount of space in that level. I think it's a little too chaotic. If it were more organized, I think it will work okay, especially if there were a series of columns and then the eye can say, okay, this is what's happening. It's going in and coming back out. Here it's yeah, chaotic. So that's just an exercise. So I'm gonna go ahead and start on the third idea. I don't like it enough to start to do that side. By having the previous idea there, it gives me just kind of visualize that there's no shape to it. It's very organic. So if I need to do something with a hill there, then this is the way to go. But it doesn't look like this is a column of a building that needs to be fortified. It has a lot of exciting angles going on, but nothing to suggest that this is, really strong. So I'm going to go to the next idea. So it's practically finished. It was a rather simple build, so I didn't need to stop midway. So the idea is for the column to start at a certain point and then it becomes wider as it goes higher. The wedges kind of lend to that idea, but the issue being is, yeah, you can see a big gap, but when I put a single length of or single width of smooth plates, there's still kind of a gap. And oops, more or less, it's a simple um, stacking brick layout, and just alternating between the different browns so that it can kind of represent what's going on there. And the other idea is for to really bring out the corner of the higher level out this way so that there's more building room than the level below it. Um, Overall, I would have probably explored it some more if there was not a gap or a different way of putting these wedges onto this side of the columns. So at this point, I'm going to want to see how much space are the stairs going to take so that maybe I really need to pull away from the center of the tower so that it has enough room for some science to occur and for the stairs to be in there also. So that's the next part. But more or less, in terms of shape, I'm going with the first idea where it slopes starting wide and then coming up to a point here. It does reduce how much interior space there is, but that's why I also want to see how much space the stairs are going to take up and maybe what kind of balancing act I need to do in order for it to all fit together. At first, I thought these squares were going to be sufficient. They kind of seem big. They were definitely bigger than what I had when I was younger, but this is showing that this is a challenge to kind of fit all the ideas and try to make it look livable for a Lego person. All right, so let me do some quick stairs and see how much space it needs to go 8 levels or 8 bricks high. Oh, and I didn't really show how these were hung, but basically this kind of bracket, I can put a brick in here and then this way, and then put it on a level there, and then kind of cover it up. The covering up is pretty good. There is a slight gap, but if that's part of the look, then go for it. But again, it's just not quite doing what I wanted to do. So on to the next idea. Now with the stairs in place, it's easy to see that the tower is going to be mostly a vertical circulation and then very little place for science. So just to make a note, I did leave this in place because it seemed like a good idea. This can be further out and then go back in for the what would be the new architecture, the fenestrations, the lighter architecture. This one, I kind of put it the same, just one in. I didn't do any interaction with the stone blocks, but looking at this, it's going to be very tight. Let's see. So on this side, that will be the place for, let's say, the lab, which is not going to be very fancy. I'm going to use some of the technology pieces that I have, some this and that. I haven't really decided that yet, but it's going to happen there. The only thing is, it's not a lot of space, especially with, let's see, we do have a clearance here, just the way the stairs wrap around. The other approach is, because it needs to have stairs, it needs to have walls, castle, and all that. Why not combine them in terms of pushing out the stairs this way, and it will be the thicker part, kind of all the way to the edge, make it decorative and, use interesting pieces. And the stairs will come around here. Below the stairs will be the masonry. Above will be thinner architecture. So that way it can be enclosed. It can still have some mass for the first level at least. And then it will be the new architecture on top of that, but also will be the next element. Oh, I also just took this aside because I thought, wow, it's really not a lot of room. But yes, that is 8 bricks tall. And so that's how many steps it's going to take to get to that level. So in order to get that high, I think it would be best just to kind of go out and see how that looks. It is going to change the staircase because then I now have a wider circumference to kind of rotate this around. So it's not going to need to be this much. Plus, it's going to, open up a little bit in the middle so we can see how that looks. And I think that has to be the next step. I cleared the area and I stopped here just to show that I'm going to start the stairs where the white bricks are because of this platform. I just wanted to make sure how things were going to interact. So it does seem that I can do it where at least for the stairs here, put a wall here that will stay with this base, but will fit into place once this comes this way. It's going to be kind of a challenge, but I think that'll be the best way because I can come in here. There's room enough to put a wall that will be part of the tower here and yet be able to not be part of the structure of this thing. So that's the other part, the taking away. So the stairs can come around here and that will be fixed to the base because it's going to be massive. But I need to think of how the lighter architecture or the new architecture is going to fit on top. And it's going to be a challenge too, but we'll get there. Okay, this looks much better. The stairs look much more grander. There's a lot more space for science. Then there is enough space for the wall that's going to enclose it this way. And I did flush the line. So the edge of the stairs are with the edge of the stones here. So it's going to go straight up. And then at least one for the handrail, but also for the architecture above. So that is going to be an interesting outcome. I do have a little bit of space in the corners, especially here, to kind of support the rest of the tower. But that is still something I'm going to need to focus on. Especially how to keep, like when these are set and when I remove them, they come out at the correct spot and not midway. The other one is to maybe have a place for it to rest, kind of a lip around here. So maybe that could also be part of the stairs to kind of set into place. It's all good because I think it's coming together. This looks much better. And for the corner, maybe a little bit of a suggestion of a pillar there. I think it's going to come out good. I'm more excited about this one. There's less doubt as to what direction to go to. But I think this is the way to go. So, next step, I do want to think about it some more. What I want to think about is actually what's going to come out. Because new plates that are stuck together are really strong. So maybe that is the steps. The steps themselves are the bottom part of the tower, which means once I set them in, it'll be perfect. But when I take the tower out, it's going to not have a flat base. So it's not going to be easy to rest while I'm moving things around. And plus, it's going to be about, 24 tall because most of the blue is going to stay here, but the remainder is going to come away just take off, which might be okay. If one side's flat, then I can always lay it flat without having to worry that it's going to topple. But at least I have a good direction as to how the tower's going to stand in terms of how it's going to look. The other thing to think about is I am dedicated to having this part, the heavy stuff, the masonry, up to the stairs. So that means it's kind of earth coming up like so, and then the next element comes up and comes this way. So the area in between might be the next element. So it's not going to be a perfectly horizontal line for each element. It's probably going to be just kind of following the stairs. That is what changes the element. Until you get to this level, then it's a new one. Maybe. We'll see how that looks. But it's an interesting thought not to just have a perfect horizontal line. It might be more fun that way. And just a note, this angle is where you can see most of the interior. So if there's going to be kind of like windows or openings, this is where you can see most of it. Here also, less so here, but we'll look at that. So I think this would be a good spot to kind of stop it here, just to kind of continue thinking about it so that I can have time for the other part I want to focus on. So for the next area, I'm going to borrow some of this idea right here, in which there's some of the rocks appeared, but then there seems to be some kind of smooth out rock that becomes part of the foundation for the tower there. So I'm going to borrow that idea and bring it over here. When I was doing this, I was kind of putting the rocks in place, grouping the colors so that they seem to be as the rest of the rocks, where there's a large grouping of a color and then there's smaller details going on. But it doesn't really work that well when it's stacked in that fashion, because then you have clear-cut lines kind of divide them up, whereas here it's a little bit more definitely overlapping, but a lot more chaotic, I would say, compared to this. This one you can see the forms clearly, there's color, but here it's less predictable. So to match this idea with the tower, I'm going to be incorporating bricks with horizontal studs and more wedges. Kind of put them in here, replace some of these bricks, kind of place them around, kind of representing this kind of aesthetic with the regular architectural forms. So we'll see how that goes. It is still going to be in sketch mode because this part is going to be filled in with grays, black, and white colors to represent its stone coming up and then being carved out up here. But I'm not ready to go in for part where to cover this up. Maybe soon, so that way I can finalize how this is going to look. But also at the same time, this might play a part as to how the rest of the tower is going to be. So that's why I'm kind of not rushing into it, but I do want to explore how to fix this a little bit more. It does seem to need some help. So here's the progress so far. I replaced some of the regular bricks with bricks that have the horizontal studs so that I can attach the plates to. I tried to make sure that they were on the same grid. As you can see, this type of horizontal stud is right there on the line on this level, but on this level is one above. And yet they're able to interact so that if anything, I can put a plate that big to connect them all. Definitely not that one, but still, that's how they can interact if needed. So the next step is to put the plates and see how that looks. It looks a lot better, I think. See, that's the full view. So even though the arches are not completely there, especially here, it still helps the idea that part of the architecture is emerging from the rocks. And so as long as I kind of continue that further down this way, it will meld together. So that'll probably be, a further thought as to how this can interact with the staircase and eventually this part right here. But I think I'm gonna go with that idea because it does break up the bricks, the normal bricks, but I'm not replacing them entirely, just kind of enough to break up the pattern. And so the idea is to keep the regular bricks in the background and have these in the foreground to kind of keep the idea that this is the carved and this is the rough, but still left in place for some reason, but it still looks cool. And I'm going to go with it. So that will be it for this episode. Working on the Tower of Fun, making sure that the architecture kind of melds with the existing conditions. I like how that is going. And for the Tower of Understanding, I like how this is going too, especially since that this makes more sense to have it thicker here, but not necessarily all the way up. In fact, I'm thinking of using the green base as the bottom part of the removable part of the tower. In other words, I'm going to have to go down underneath here so that I can grab some around here and lift it up. So that way I can move this around and use the desk for something else. But basically, this is probably going to be really helpful to be grabbing onto because it's going to be pretty much bricks and nothing delicate, which might happen in the upper levels, but we'll see how that goes. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for coming by. And if you liked the episode, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see how this castle progresses, go ahead and sign up for notifications and subscribe to the channel. And see you next time.